Hello, my name is Misha Sharif, and you're watching Decoding Careers, where I talk to professionals about their careers. Today we have Heather Razak, who's an iCode franchise owner. Now, here's some information about being an entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs have an MBA or a master's in business. In general, however, anyone can be an entrepreneur. Today we have Heather Razak, like I just mentioned. How are you doing today, Heather?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm doing good, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for
Of
agreeing to
course,
the interview.
of course.
Now, let's get started straight into the questions, with the first question being, what three words best describe your profession and why?
Um, what three words? Very time intensive, busy, very demanding, but it's also flexible for me and rewarding.
Definitely. And I think it's really cool how you decided to own a franchise of iCode. Obviously, I'm a really big supporter of women in STEM and just women being more involved in technology. And I love how you decided to be a part of iCode. It's honestly it's really motivating for me because I know there are other women in technology who are definitely there and who are holding prominent positions, and it is definitely male dominated, but there are other females there to back you up and support you. But my question is, why did you choose to be an iCode franchise owner? Why didn't you choose to be a franchise owner of Starbucks or something? Obviously, Starbucks is kind of a little,
Right,
but what was the reason?
right. So the reason is I felt when I was presented with the opportunity that it was definitely going to be something that was important for the future and important for kids' educations in the future. And so I just felt that it was building a skill set that was going to be really highly in demand, not only here, but globally. And yeah, so I felt like it would make an impact and make a difference.
Definitely. And you know what? I wouldn't say I am the most tech savvy person, but recently because I'm in high school, I have been able to take a couple of technology related classes, like computer science principles and computer science in general. And I don't know, coding is it just seems like a lot of fun. And since I started to learn a little bit about Java and Snap, I just kind of it's this familiarity, and I really like how you're just improving, and you really want to help the world and have something that can further itself through education by investing in being a franchise owner of iCode. Now let's move on to the next question, which is, what educational background is best required for your profession? And I know that you're an entrepreneur, so there isn't really an educational background, but what would you recommend?
There isn't really an educational background. It does help, obviously, if you have a business background. I do not. I actually am an RN. I'm actually a retired nurse. So my background is in the health sciences. And I'm just about to complete my Master's of Liberal Studies as well over at SMU. So that being said, that you're correct when you started the video saying that anybody can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to have a preset degree in order to do it. You just have to have the drive to do it, and be passionate about something, about an idea, or about something that you want to bring to the community, bring to the public, and then invest your time in it.
Okay, moving on to the next question. So we had just talked a little bit about education, and I know we said anyone can be an entrepreneur. And so this kind of makes this question a little bit I wouldn't say stupid, but I would say it kind of voids this question, because are there any special certifications or trainings required? But I feel as an entrepreneur, someone who's starting a company, there are certain things you do need to know. So maybe you could share that with us instead.
Yeah, I mean, certain things you would need to know. Obviously, you're going to have to know the basics of how do you register a business, right? How do you file for the name for your business? How do you, you know, are you going to do an LLC? Are you going to do a corporation? Are you going to do a partnership? Are you, there's different ways that you can create a business legally, right? So you have to kind of research that and decide which way is going to be the best for you. And you're going to have to know basic money management, obviously. And I would say those are the main things. And also, what are the basic workers, or what am I trying to say? What are the basic human resources guidelines for your state? Each state has its own regulations for hiring people and firing people. And also the federal government has regulations, right, about hiring and firing. So you have to know, those are like really, really basic things that you have to know, at the get-go.
I would assume so. If you don't know how to like hire and fire people, how's your business going to grow? Okay.
Right.
So this is probably one of my favorite questions to ask. And I just love listening to this because it just gives like the most insight to like how a person's business or their business life is in general, like the epitome of how it is. And this question is, could you describe to me a typical day as a franchise owner of iCode?
A typical day. Well, I have 2 locations. So I would say, it's checking in with one location where I have, which is more established, and where I have somebody as a director, checking in, seeing what's going on for the day, what's the plan, what kind of social media we're doing that week, what events are coming up, and what are we looking at targeting in terms of enrollment for that week, any particular classes or camps or etc. And then for my other location, I'm actually functioning as the director. So, it's being there and then doing those same things, right? Meeting with staff, figuring out what social media is that week, figuring out what calls we need to do, what enrollments we're targeting, what new classes we're starting or camps or events. Yeah, so those are kind of like the major things.
Okay. So
Right.
there are like, it's like,
and then there are like just basic like housekeeping tasks, right? Like you might have to do billing, or you might have to do, depending on the day or the week, right? Scheduling, I have to schedule the employees, I have to make sure all the classes are, have instructors or teaching assistants if they need those as well. And then also managing the materials that are needed to go alongside with the curriculum, making sure that I have everything in stock. So.
Okay. There are a lot of aspects actually, and I think you would have to deal with a wide range of things, which kind of begs the question of like, what do you think are the 3 most important skills? Because there are so many different aspects. You're doing housekeeping tasks, you're talking to your employees, you obviously have to deal with the people who come, and you have to deal with another franchise. So what do you think are the 3 most important skills?
3 most important skills. You have to have good communication skills. I'd say that's number 1. You can't communicate to clients who are coming in, obviously, and you can't communicate to your staff well if you don't have effective communication skills, right? So that's really important. I would say the other skill is time management and being able to manage your time between all of the different tasks that you have to focus on. Being able to delegate, knowing what you can delegate and what you absolutely have to do. So I think that's really important as well. What else? I think those are the 3 main ones, I would say.
Yeah. And I think like those are really important skills to have in general, just knowing like delegating time. It's really important, knowing, having a schedule, making sure that everything flows properly. And I really like how they just apply to everything that can come at you. And speaking of, I'm pretty sure as the director of an iCode and being a franchise owner, there are lots of challenges. So could you give me some insight to some of the challenges that come with being a franchise owner?
Um, I would say challenges are just, just the day-to-day challenges that any business would have, right? You're going to have challenges just with the general business environment. For example, the last 2 years we were dealing with COVID. Okay, so every business in the world actually was dealing with COVID, right? So everybody was trying to find a way to adapt and modify um, their business in order to survive in that environment, right? So what other challenges? I guess other challenges as a business owner right now in this market, it's challenging to find employees. I don't know if you're kind of keeping up with the news, but there's, more jobs than there are people applying for jobs right now. So it's a very competitive job market. So that's a really big challenge right now. There's challenges right now with, like I said, with COVID, coming out of that. And I would say staffing is probably one of the biggest things right now is staffing. And I think in general, just challenges, at the end of the day, if you're the business owner, you're going to be the person who's going to have to be there if nobody else can be there. Right. So that is one thing. If you decide that you're going to go down the route of entrepreneurship, it all does fall on you at the end. Right. So you just have to know that, you might have to, if the alarm's going off and you get the call at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I don't know, because the hail set the alarm off or whatever, right? You're the person who's going to have to do that. So you have to be, I think those are some of the challenges. But I think it's offset by the positive aspects that you have from it.
Yeah. And you know what? With challenges, I feel like after every challenge, there's like that, like after you've accomplished and completed a challenge, there's like that feeling of just happiness when everything works out and you're like, oh my goodness, it's
Yeah.
all good. And speaking of like the job crisis that's happening right now, I see just so many stores and they're like, we're hiring, and they're just listing like the amount of money they're offering. And it's really hard because the other day my family and I went to Chipotle, and it was really hard for us as customers just because the company didn't have like that franchise did not have enough people. There was 2 people on staff and there was like a line of people. And I just felt so much empathy for those people at that moment because they were serving like 7 people at once, and it was just a huge hassle. So I definitely see where a lot of businesses can struggle because of like the job shortage. And I also think that like as the business owner, you're definitely there and you're definitely a busybody making sure everything's like flowing and filling in the gaps if there is some that are prominent. And and with that, I think that takes a lot of time and effort. And I feel like that can also take a toll on your personal life. So how do you balance your personal life with your work life?
Balancing personal life and work life is really important. So for me, I delegate a lot. I probably staff. For me, it's more important that I have time to do certain things, and that I have staff that do certain things, because that's really important to me. And one of my daughters has special needs, so it's really important to me that I have time to do those certain things. So
Definitely. And delegation is a really good way because it's just kind of like equally allotting things to people. That is what delegation is essentially. And so when you do that, it just kind of like helps balance out like the workload and helps you kind of like separate your work life and your personal life. And I really like that. I think it's a really good way of managing the amount of work that's put on you. That's all, honestly, it's really amazing. Now, this is the most important question. So to all the viewers who are watching, please pay attention as this is the most important question. And this question is, what advice would you give to a high schooler who is trying to become an entrepreneur?
High schooler who's trying to become an entrepreneur. Well, first of all, go to college. um, Go to college for sure. And I would also say, I would say in high school, you have a long road ahead of you. So you might be thinking that now, but by the time you get through college, you're on a totally different track. So I would say, you know, don't stress yourself out of trying to like pigeonhole yourself into this one career track or career path or major, because the person you are at 15 is not the person you are at 19, and it's way different than who you are at 21, and then it's again hugely different when you're 30, right? So I would say when you're in high school, you have lots of time. You have lots of time, and you're going to keep changing. And so my biggest advice is go to school, go to college. Don't not go to school. Obviously, go to college. That's the most important thing. And you have that time to kind of sort things out and kind of figure out, as you're exposed to different things in college, what your interests might be. And then, statistically, most people are changing careers. The average number of careers now in the United States is like, I don't know, 4 or 5, right? So most people are not. I mean, I'm, older. And so like my grandparents, like my grandfather worked in a factory and he retired from that factory and got a pension. That world is gone. So that doesn't exist anymore. Most people are not just changing jobs, they're changing whole careers, like 4 or 5 times in their lifetime. And I think a lot of that is just, we're very fortunate here. We have a lot of flexibility. Schooling is always open to you here. It's not like you get boxed out at a certain age, where in certain places in the world, right? That's you get shut out. You can't change. But here you can. So yeah, I would say that you're just going to continue to grow and change, and then allow yourself that time to do it, but definitely stay in school.
Definitely, school is really important. Thank you so
Very
much.
important.
Thank you so much for this great advice. I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching could benefit from it. And definitely, I hope that they take it into consideration and really think about what you said, because I just love listening to what people older than me have to say. They've lived their life and they know what they're talking about. And so it's just really insightful. And it's like kind of like you're telling me to be focused and persevere and think about what I'm going to do, but also know that I'm going to change. And I really like that, because it's not something like, oh, yes, like just try your best. It's just like stay true to yourself and work on what you want to be and just keep your mind open, which I really like. Thank you.
And I would also say, as a woman, it's very specific to women, but women have seasons in their life that are very different, I think, from the role that men have. We have a season, in school and all of that, and then we get into the season of motherhood, especially when our children are really little, and maybe you make a choice that you're not working that much at that time, and then maybe you make a choice that you go back later, right? And then you have another season where maybe your children are having children and they want help, and you go through this other season when your parents become old and they need help and you're caregiving for them, right? So women are always, as caregivers, we are always in that role to one degree or another with various people in our lives, right? And so as we age and go through these different decades, our that changes, those seasons change, right? And so time at career versus time doing those things is going to change and evolve. You're always going to have this kind of ebb and flow going back and forth. Does that make sense?
It kind of does, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm pretty young and I have my whole life ahead of me that I'm not able to understand it as well. But I definitely think that your words of wisdom will come back to me one day in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this interview. Everyone, this is Heather Ozak. She is a franchise owner of iCode, and thank you so much for coming here and doing this interview. It's really helpful for me in my goal to word.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.